From the actor wanting better things in life to Ty's family finding new beginnings after his death. Here's the real reason why Graham Wardle left Heartland. Ty Borden dying was one of the top saddest moments on the show. He'd been a lead on the show since season 1, but when season 14 came around, the writers killed him off without batting an eye, all because Graham wanted to leave the show. The fans were hurt, of course. They never wanted to see their favorite ranch hand kick the bucket, but no one could convince Graham to stick around. So the real question is, why did Graham want to leave? It's kind of obvious if I'm being honest. The actor has been on the show since 2007. That's 14 years. It's only natural Graham wanted to move on after giving all that time to the show and focus on new things. So, he sat down with Murray Shostak, the series creator, and had a chat about calling it quits 2 years before the final episode. Safe to say, Graham had been planning his move for a long time. He said he'd been thinking about it for years in a message to fans, and he wanted to do it in a way that would honor him and the show. So, Murray granted his wish, and the writers wrote him off in season 14. Ty was shot by a stray bullet from a poacher, and he didn't know until he took his wife Amy to the hospital, since she had been shot in the shoulder in the final episode of season 13. Ty was trying to protect her, but then in the opening episode of season 14 titled "Keep Me in Your Heart," Ty collapsed while leading Spartan back to the barn. Amy and Jack rushed to his side, but it was too late. Turns out he had developed a fatal blood clot. Graham's asked for some time off before as well. Remember when Ty left for Mongolia during season 10? Yeah, that was because Wardle needed a good old break, but this time, a break wasn't gonna cut it. Of course, fans aren't happy with Ty's death at all. One fan thought that Borden's death was unfair and depressive, and another couldn't bring themselves to watch the show without him. Many were concerned about Amy, and especially Lindy, who'd remember very little about her dad. Some wanted a few clips of the funeral to ease their pain, but that would have meant Graham would have to film more scenes, which wasn't gonna fly. Wiser fans in the fandom tried to make others understand that it was all because Graham wanted to leave, and there really was no other way to handle the situation. Others thought it was time since Ty was rarely on the show, he was always MIA, and so fans were mourning him way before his death. One person thought Ty dying was better than him and Amy getting divorced. Of course, all of them wished it had never come to this. But here we are. The good news is, Graham has been branching out ever since he left the show. He started a podcast, Time Has Come, where he dives into the personal journeys of his guests and how they've stepped beyond what is safe and into the unknown. And guess what? Wardle even interviewed Amber Marshall. He also has plans to do an episode to talk more about his decision to leave Heartland. Graham also published a book, Find Your Truth, which is a collection of his writings and poetry. The actor is proud of this one, I can tell you that much, because he got to prove someone wrong. 10 years ago, someone challenged him to put his writings into a book, and at first he wasn't sold on the idea, thinking, who in the world would read it? But 2,000 people did, and Graham couldn't be happier. He thanked his fans for their support on Instagram, and if you want to check out his work as well, you can buy the digital form of the book since there's no physical copy at the moment. Seems like Graham is doing well for himself, but unfortunately, I can't say the same about the show. Amber Marshall said that the show's more depressing now. She's been with Graham since season 1. Both of them were broody teenagers, but they grew up together and eventually tied the knot. So after spending all that time together, Amber thinks there's a Graham-shaped hole in the show. She said season 14 was very depressing, and Ty's death shattered everyone in the fandom, even the cast, since Graham's character has been with them for 14 years now. Heck, Amber didn't approve of the actor's plans to leave at first, but she has come around since then. Marshall realizes that this is the best for her co-star, and thinks it's important to listen to your gut and do what feels right. You might hurt some people along the way, but Graham left the show in a way that was respectful to both the show and the cast. He informed the writers years before his decision, giving them plenty of time to come up with the perfect ending for his character. Sure, Ty's death was sudden for the fans, but his character arc had been wrapped up by then. He had gone through tremendous spiritual growth and was completely different from that kid in juvie, which is why Graham hopes that fans can find some comfort in his death, even though Ty's story is heartbreaking. The actor wants people to realize that there's still a way to live, even after someone's sudden death. Just look at the message Graham had for fans. I think that there's a really good story, a really good truth that everything comes to an end and everything dies. So make the most of what you have and live it to the fullest. It's obvious that Graham loved the show and his character. He wanted to leave in the end, but Heartland gave him some of the best years of his life, and he can't deny it. The actor always loved it when the writers expanded the show's universe, like when Jack saved Ty from Calgary, or remember the entire Mongolia storyline and even the motorcycle road trip. That was some good stuff. But more than anything, the actor loved taking on the role of a new dad. Graham wants kids himself in the future, so the show kind of gave him the opportunity to learn how to be a dad. The Canadian also made a whole bunch of lifelong friends on the show who miss him dearly. Chris Potter, who plays Tim Fleming on the show, is one of them, but he understands Graham's decision to leave at the end of the day. In Potter's eyes, Graham started way too young on the show, so he still had some life stuff to figure out. Meanwhile, Chris started working on Heartland in his late 20s, so he'd gotten the big life stuff out of the way. That didn't make Graham leaving any easier. Marshall admitted that the experience of shooting season 14 without Graham has been an emotional roller coaster for everyone, but they're all hanging on and looking for the silver lining. Amber can work closely with other cast members now, while her character will need to find a new sense of purpose. Amy doesn't know life without Ty, so it'll be interesting to see how she gets back on her feet. Something tells me she'll do fine, since she had a new love interest in season 14 in Sam Langston, a big-time ranch owner and a former basketball player. Sam was the first person that Amy opened up to after Ty's death, which makes sense since he's been in her corner during this rough patch. He helped her rescue that wild horse and lent Amy a listening ear. I think Sam might be good for Amy because 1, he's rich, and 2, he lives next door. But in case her and Sam don't work out, Amy will always have her horses, and she has to look after Lindy as well. I'd say Amy is doing well for herself because in season 15 she was way stronger than before. She was all about focusing on the future, and so is everyone else. Ty's death changed them. They now realize how precious every moment is with their loved ones and working harder than ever to achieve their dream. It'd be interesting to see where they all go from here in season 16, which is scheduled for release on October 2nd, 2023. According to the official synopsis of the show, Amy will be taking off the blinders and will be looking at life with a new focus. She'll also be focusing on new friendships and maybe even romance. The best part is that her daughter Lindy will be following in her footsteps as she gets closer to the horses on the ranch. Overall, good things on the horizon for these two. So from Ty's family finding new beginnings to the actor wanting better things in life, here was the real reason why Graham Wardle left Heartland.